Okay, we are live.
All right.
So, Erin, I wanted to redo a recording with you because I think, were my second podcast recording.
Yeah, I think you're right.
And I was a little unpracticed at that point. No, I'm still relatively am pretty new at it. But I know that my knowledge of you and my experience of you is so much deeper than the conversation that we recorded. And I thought it might be a good opportunity for us to dig a little deeper and let the world get to know you in a different way.
All
What do you
right.
think of that?
Yeah, I'm in. When you suggested diving deeper, my first response was, yeah, let's do it. And then I would say in the last 24 hours, I thought, what is she going to ask me?
I wondered about that.
And I mean, there's not much that I haven't already told you before.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was curious and slightly hesitant and thinking, what are we going to get into? But I'm here, so I'm ready.
So let's try it. Well, let's start with the broken open question and see what happens.
Okay.
So Erin, tell me about a time when you experienced some adversity in your life that at the time felt like the end of the world, that in hindsight was a real gift to you.
Mm-hmm. I'm curious, before I answer that, what's your definition of adversity?
Well, anything that didn't go the way you thought it was going to go.
Mm-hmm.
Anything that, something that did not go to plan.
Yeah. So I have quite a few. I have a lot of examples for you. Most of them are work related. So things that, especially as an entrepreneur, like I used to be, I'd say one of my faults used to be that, and I'm still working on this, is that as soon as something was a possibility, I had it in my mind that it was an absolute. Like I couldn't distinguish between an idea and like an absolute commitment, like that this is happening. And I would often be disappointed and heartbroken and confused by these situations because I just was like, well, I want it, it's possible, but I actually just couldn't think of any other situation than it following through or happening. Same with people. So if I had an idea or someone had an idea, it was like, but you said. So when those things wouldn't happen, I'd be crushed. So a big one for me was back 2017. I was working on a project with another coach / friend of mine that I had known for 7-8 years, and I had approached him. We'd never done any work together before, but we were quite connected. We'd actually gone through coach training together, and I had reached out to him about this project idea and to partner with him on it, because it actually he had direct experience in this field that we were going to be connected with a certain demographic of people. He had direct experience with that. So we put in a ton of time building out some programming, building what would be sort of this blended learning environment for people, tons of content. We brought in other people too to do like editing and working on this project. And we like really put down our heads and like worked hard slugging it out. And that was a time in my personal life where I was going through a ton of transition. I was, going through a separation. I had just moved out of my home. And so it was like this project was like my future vision. I was like the thing that I could put my attention to and my energy to.
Mm-hmm.
And again, we just like worked like dogs on this project. And then I had an opportunity to actually be in Hong Kong and pitch this project to a director of HR for a multinational company. So it was like a big opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
Couldn't believe I'd gotten it, to have this meeting. And probably 3 weeks out of this meeting in Hong Kong, this partner pulled out.
Mm.
And he said, I'm out. I don't want to do this anymore. We talked about sort of part of that was like revenue streams, or like the type of money we would need in terms of our marketing, and to like really get an audience behind this and really have this launch. And he just went, no, I'm done.
Mm.
And I was devastated.
Mm.
And um and really thought about just closing up shop, like in terms of that project, and being like, well, if he's not in, I can't do it without him. And sort of like fumbled my way through this meeting in Hong Kong, and had a nice enough conversation, but I sure wasn't prepared to like really pitch this project, and at the time really didn't understand the enough around sales and the process I needed to go through with this person, and kind of just like left it. And it was a really hard sort of lesson for me to just like let it go after so much time and work and heartache had gone into it, and just see it crumble.
Mm.
I just hadn't even considered that it would fail in that way. So that was a big one for me.
What'd you learn? You said it was hard for me to learn how to let it go. And as you were speaking, I was thinking about, you and I've had lots of conversations that everything goes the way it's meant to go. Like things are meant, and so from that perspective, where was the struggle? If everything goes the way it's meant to go.
Yeah. The struggle for me was I had tied so much of my self-worth into this being successful.
Got it.
It was like me, especially at that period of time in my life, it was like me proving to myself and to the world that I had what it takes to make something of myself and do it on my own, or in partnership with another person in that way. And so when that was lost, like I had no backup plan.
Mm.
I'd been doing other things in the business and, consulting here and there and coaching, my practice had been in place for a while. But it was like this was going to be my badge of honor.
Got it. And actually, when you were speaking, I actually did jot down the word confidence, because I think that is a sort of a recurring thing. I mean, you talked about, this guy backed out and you were not prepared to pitch this on your own. You were like, well, I can't do this by myself.
Yeah.
And then it fizzled out, which, I could imagine at the time might have been, and you talked about wanting to fold up shop. And I think, man, like, here we are with confirmation that you are not meant to do this work.
Right. Absolutely. But I couldn't see that. I just thought if I worked hard enough at this, that it was going to be something. Mm-hmm. Right. And it wasn't just me that worked hard at it. There was multiple people that stepped in to help with this project.
Yeah.
And I, I think for me, one of the biggest lessons was, knowing that I have this like ability to be incredibly persistent and determined, but when to recognize that enough is enough. Mm-hmm. And, and I still I learned so much from that process that has helped me become successful today that I use. There's even materials that I had built that, acted as templates for the next time that I built another program, and it just made the work that much more efficient. So the work wasn't lost.
Got it.
But it really was hard for me to let it go in terms of what it could have been.
So what was your process for pulling out of that? I would imagine it would be messy. Your process from going from, maybe I need to throw in the towel. Maybe I need to close up shop. Maybe this isn't meant to be, to, okay, I'm going to get up and try again tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
How do you go from here to here?
Yeah, that's a good question because um, it wasn't a quick process for me. It really took some time to reframe it as like it wasn't a failure. It wasn't even that I was on the wrong path. Like to not even consider that I had done something wrong. That it was again like it did help me in some way. And I think also the pain of letting something go that you have heart and soul and blood, sweat, and tears into um, was an important lesson. And that kind of pain, I think you, as an entrepreneur, you feel again and again and again, because I have sure experienced that more than once even in the last 3 or 4 years in terms of my work. It's learning how to work your ass off and be 100% invested in it, and know that it doesn't always mean that there's sunshine and rainbows at the end. It doesn't always mean there's a pot of gold for you. It means like showing up fully and knowing that you still may be told no.
Yeah, it's interesting because when you talk about this, I'm thinking about you've got to be wholeheartedly pursue a
Yeah.
contract and at the same time accept that it might not be meant to be,
Yeah.
might not be the right thing, even though you've invested in it.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, and I've learned how to, and I'm still learning this, but there is this difference between like full investment with without having expectations and attachment to what's going to happen.
Yeah.
So because I didn't learn that lesson right after that experience with that work, because I ended up pitching on a project that I would say was about 8 months to 10 months in the making. So when I count the timeline of being introduced to this organization, having conversation after conversation, pitching proposals, being in front of a team of people to pitch again, and again, the amount of work that went into that process and the timeline of that process, I still hadn't learned that lesson of, again, step in fully, but have no expectations to it of what's going to happen in the end. Because I had to feel the burn of rejection and the sting of quote unquote failure from that experience too, and being like, but how could they possibly choose somebody else if we've been doing this for 10 months? And that was hard. But again, it was like, when I look back on that, it was because again, my ego needed to have that. My ego needed the win.
Right.
Yeah.
It's to me. I mean, especially because it's right at that time where your marriage is ending. And your marriage partner was also your business partner, right? So here you are splitting off on your own, and you need some evidence that this is the right move, and you didn't get it.
Yeah.
So yeah, like you needed that. And
yeah. I mean, and if you asked any of my close friends or even close colleagues of mine what it was like for 3 years, really 2.5 definitely, of time of being like, how many more opportunities can you have that are so close? How many more times like could you possibly go through this where it everyone would get excited, because it would feel like, not just for me but for so many people that were close to me, that like, here it is, here's your break, here's that one contract that's going to propel you and have you feel some kind of stability here. And it would be like I could taste it was so close, and then it would just be gone. And I thought I was resilient before, but man, this has really shown me just how much grit I've got, and more importantly, how much it matters to me.
Right.
Yeah.
I was just thinking about that as you were talking, because I'm thinking, what's popping into my head is I was meant for more than this.
Yeah.
Right. Cements it for you.
Yeah.
So if I say to you, Erin, you're meant for bigger things, and I think I've said this to you
You may have a few
several
times.
times. What pops into your head when I say that?
When you say it to me now, I'm like, well, of course. Yeah, I am.
Yeah.
Um, and there was a part of me before that knew that, but just hadn't had the results to confirm that it was true. I had that sense of knowing in myself of, yeah, I've got more to give. And when I look around at what, people are doing, and I'd be like, I've got something to add here. I've got, I know that I can do these things well, and I just need someone to open the door.
Mm-hmm.
And, and it's not to say that I didn't have like little wins along the way, but at the same time, I was like, but there's more. Like there's gotta be more. And I had this sense of like, the kind of playing field that I should be on. And yet was like, it just felt like it was like grasping at clouds sometimes. It just felt like it was just out of reach for me.
Do you have a vision in your head when I say you're meant to do more, and now you're starting to believe it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't mean you're starting to believe it because I say it to you. I just mean you're
Oh, you
stepping
can.
into it, right? Like you're like,
It's all
okay,
you.
yeah, it's all me. Good for me.
Mm-hmm.
Good for
Thanks,
me.
Maureen. Thank you.
I am
You
good.
have been a big part of it. Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
What is the vision though that comes to mind? What do you see yourself? What does more mean? Do you
Mm-hmm.
know? Are you afraid to tell us, or?
I'm not afraid. I think it's one of those things that becomes more and more clear every day. I've always had this sense of, like, for me, it's not about being so public and being like a face that everybody recognizes, but it is like being known within a community, of, whether that's business community or just even public, people knowing that I do good work.
Mm-hmm.
And when someone thinks of, well, we need someone to design or teach or help our team become better, Erin is the one that's going to help us do that.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what I want. And I don't have as much attachment to, sort of quote unquote fame in a way. I just
Right.
want to know that like my work has had impact, that it, reaches more people, that it's made a difference. And I want to know that I get to live a life that is, one that I choose because what I do creates abundance. What I do creates, um, opportunity for me and my family.
Mm-hmm.
So, I won't pretend that money isn't important. It absolutely is,
Mm-hmm.
for me. But I just want to know that I get to do the work that I'm great at.
Yeah, it sounds like there's your in your niche client group, you want to be front of mind with confidence
Yeah.
for the people who are in need. Like, so you want, like you say, like you want them to go, oh yeah, I know who let's call Erin.
Yeah.
Right. We need to call Erin on this one. She'll get us through this, or she'll help us to get through, or that makes sense to me. Rather than them just being like, oh, I wonder who this girl is. I wonder if she's any good. Right. Like,
right.
yeah.
Yeah.
You want them to have the same kind of confidence that I have in you.
Mm-hmm.
I know what you're capable of. You're right. And I think I just can't wait for everyone else to figure it out too. I think they are, actually. I shouldn't say I can't wait for them. I think it's happening.
I agree. It's happening.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So your website, Grow with Centrivity. What does Centrivity mean?
Yeah, so it's just Centrivity. That is the business name. So people can find it at centrivity.ca. So that's the best way to see some of the things that I'm up to. So Centrivity, I went through this really fun sort of, business strategy, branding session with a team, and And centrivity came from the word centrifugal. So I often talk about community and circles and, the power of, growth and development when we do it in community.
Mm-hmm.
So whether that's, with one other person, that's your spouse, your partner, your friend, 25 of your community members in your city, if it's your team at work, if you're in a classroom with 10 other people, growth is exponential when it's done in a circle.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so I just always referred back to or I was always moving my hands like this in a circle. And so we landed on, you'd start to wordsmith and create words that don't actually mean anything based on something that does. And so that's where centrivity came in. And I just liked how it felt. And when you see my logo, it's a circle, but it's a circle that has movement to it.
Mm-hmm.
In the art itself, it's not perfect. And for me, it was when I started to work with a designer, it was also, thinking about, I wanted it to be imperfect. It wasn't just this solid line that's connected, because life is not perfect. It's messy, it's broken, it's pieced together, it's light, it's dark, it's feminine, it's masculine.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted all of those elements to be there.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like the team that I've worked with did a really beautiful job of capturing that.
I think so too. I love your logo.
Thanks.
So when you're waking up in the morning on those days when you're thinking, oh man, I cannot wait to get at my life.
Yeah.
What is it that's lighting you up?
It's different for different days, because I get to do so many different things, and that is such a fit for me to have variety in my life. I love that it's not just coaching, and I mean, coaching takes on this whole, range of experience as well, but it's also when I get to teach, or when I get to develop, when I get to meet with people who are also creative and like to, build new things for people. Yeah, I'm excited that I get to do such different things every day. And what I would say helps me the most in terms of being motivated is knowing that there's a clear purpose for the day.
Mm.
And so it can take on so many different forms, but if I don't have a purpose for the day, I'm not motivated.
Mm. That's interesting.
Yeah. I think that's true for most people, is even if your purpose for the day is self-care, if your purpose for the day is I'm going to watch Netflix all day, and that's your intent and you follow through, that feels great.
Mm-hmm.
It's the floating, not knowing where you're landing, that is disorienting for people. It certainly is for me. So as long as I have a purpose, I have an intent for what that day is going to be, then I'm excited.
It sounds like you want to have a focus, like you say, so that you can get into flow with things like creativity. Creativity is big for you, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And when you talk about coaching, like I see you helping people to uncover,
Mm-hmm.
right? Helping people get from here to here.
Yeah,
I've
absolutely.
seen it light you up, right? You're like,
Yeah,
you light up as they're lighting up, like, and
totally.
you're getting ideas, and you're seeing different paths and ways to approach things from another angle. And like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Yeah, that's very satisfying. Yeah, being sometimes just a witness to that, sometimes being the facilitator for that, just holding the container for them to uncover. But it is so satisfying as people, they get closer to what the truth is.
Mm-hmm.
They get closer to, whether that's what the truth is for them, or in a relationship, or, an idea at work. And we start to pull away all the bullshit that actually wasn't serving them.
Mm-hmm.
And then they land on it. Yeah, I'm right there with them. It's just as exciting for me.
Yeah, I totally relate to that.
Yeah.
And so would you, if I was to ask you, well, I'm going to ask you,
If I was
if I was going
hypothetically,
to ask you, which
mm-hmm.
I'm going to, what would you say your top 3 values are?
Yes. So freedom,
Yeah. Yeah. I so relate.
variety,
Mm-hmm.
and truth.
Oh, good. That's interesting. I just wrote them down and I'm looking at them.
What do you think?
I think they suit you very, very well.
Yeah.
I see those. I see those in you, in the way you live, and the way that you approach things, for sure. Um, you and I've talked an awful lot about stories, right? The stories that we have, the stories that
Mm-hmm.
keep us stuck, the stories that light us up, the stories that touch us. And when I was looking quickly at your website today, I saw a lot about change.
Mm-hmm.
How do you,
Yes.
so how does, and so I was wondering if any of that would come into your values, where it's freedom, variety of truth, and truth.
Yeah. So here's where the business is such a reflection of who I am. Like it's very um, hard to draw the line between work and personal life
Mm-hmm.
because they're so intertwined for me. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I obviously have boundaries of, I have to create, you know, distinction between certain parts of my life, but um, they're so interconnected in that, having a value of change and freedom and truth shows up in the way that I approach my work. Um, you know, I have always had this, I guess, comfort level with change. Like I'm not afraid of change. Obviously, I like change that I have initiated, that I have, that I want more than change that has been imposed on me. And yet I find, for the most part, I kind of go with the flow and, can process change very, very quickly and accept it because I like variety.
Mm-hmm.
I like things to be different.
Mm-hmm.
I like things to move and evolve. And it's a big part of the work that I do with people without necessarily always naming it that way. But the people that I see struggle the most, that are in so much resistance, that are stuck in their lives, is because they have this idea about change that it is something to avoid, that change actually is reflecting that you're failing, or
Mm-hmm.
change is something to be mitigated, or change is something to fight against, that newness means that you have to let go of something, which is true.
Loss.
Yeah, change requires loss, and that can be on a very minute level, it can
Mm-hmm.
be on a very superficial level, but it can be on a deep soul, crushing level as well. But
Mm-hmm.
change requires the loss of something.
Well, I think
And
about that in relation to the story that you opened with, like
mm-hmm,
there was a change in plan. You didn't predict it. You didn't want it. You didn't see it
yeah,
coming. And it required some grief and loss for the vision
mm-hmm,
that you had of how this, pitch was going to go, so that you could then move into something new.
yeah,
Hmm.
absolutely.
We all experience it. Even those of
Mm-hmm,
us who are early adopters to change
mm-hmm.
can sometimes, struggle
Yeah, and
when we get attached to the way things are.
yeah, exactly. And I think for me it is this constant checking in of, um if I'm feeling attached to something, why? Like what was I actually attached to? Was it, again, something about my ego? Was it because I'm afraid that it says something about me? It you know these attachments that we have to things and people and situations and titles, and I think it requires a good hard look at, well, what is that really, what's that stemming from?
So, Erin, tell me about what you're up to right now, and is there anything that you'd like to promote?
Sure. So I've got lots going on right now, which is great. I love having lots on my plate. One of the things that I've been working on for a while now is a self-directed coaching program. So that's an online coaching program that is really the best of all the materials that I've been producing over the last 13 years. So all the things that I would do and more with a client in person, or, even virtual coaching with them. So that is being built and polished up right now. And I'll have something ready to launch in early October, if not sooner. And so the intent of that program for people and developing it is, one, people can be all over the world. Two, it's at a price point that is more accessible for a lot of people than working one-on-one with me. And two, it's on your own timeline, but you're going to get really great materials to work through on your own. So it's really the timing of this is pretty good, considering what we're going through as a world right now. One of the things that I think is so important for people as they're navigating change and uncertainty is what's your anchor point. So if the world keeps changing, and it's going to, relationships keep changing, scope of work keeps changing, how do you stay steady? And really that comes down to things like, do you know who you are? Do you know what your purpose is in this lifetime? And do you surround yourself with people that are going to support you with that? And those sound like three simple things, and yet they require a lot of work.
Yeah, that's amazing. And so this course, how long is it going to be? Do you know?
So it'll take most people sort of 5-6 months to work through it. I mean, again, it's a lot of content. People will also have the option of purchasing and working through individual modules that they feel really connect to them and where they're at in their life at that moment. But if you're committed to grand change in your life, if this is the time that you're feeling like enough is enough, I'm done compromising, sacrificing, feeling stuck, feeling confused about who I am and what's my purpose in this lifetime, then this as an entirety is for those kinds of people. So
wow, that sounds amazing. And I like the fact that you're grounding it in like, so what's your like, who are you in this?
Yeah.
Because like you say, what we've been going through is massive shifts.
Yeah, absolutely. And I recognize that is really unsettling for people, right? If you feel like the wheel is spinning and you end up finding yourself on the outside of that wheel, the spin is that much more jolting, right? It is throwing you off. But if you come back to the center, and this is very much a Buddhist Zen principle, is come back to center. And that's you. That's not somebody else holding your hand, holding you steady. That's like, how can you stay steady in the face of change and adversity? And knowing who you are is a big part of that.
Fantastic. And so that's going to become available if people keep an eye on your website.
Yeah.
And is there an opportunity for people to, and maybe there isn't, but is there an opportunity for people to opt into emails or anything like that so that you would notify them when this becomes available?
Yep, there's a place on my website for that. I send out a newsletter usually only every season, just because I don't want to bombard people with all the things that are going on. I would like to give people a lot of notice too about programming that's coming up. I get that coaching is, especially working with somebody one-on-one, it's a big commitment, but it is an incredible opportunity for people who are ready for it. Yeah,
that's fantastic. Well, thank you very much for that. So we'll have the link to your website once again in the show notes. And you do quite a bit on LinkedIn as well. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, in spurts, I'm pretty active. On the LinkedIn side, it's more corporate based. So learning about leadership principles, leadership training, those kinds of things, more on LinkedIn. Lots of programming there too for people.
Perfect. So I'll put your LinkedIn link as well. LinkedIn
Fantastic.
link. Perfect. So LinkedIn and your website. Anything else you'd like in there? We can chat. We'll chat.
Now at this point, Erin and I
very much.
conclude the podcast, we'll talk soon. But we realize that we have more to say.
Okay, I'm recording again. And we decided to record again on your suggestion. Thank you for this.
You're welcome.
To talk about uh, our podcast recording. Oh, do you want to explain what happened?
Yeah, sure. So you may or may not have picked up on, something going on between the two of us as you listen to that podcast. And here we are, we're just like immediately after recording, we're still in our same clothes, we're in the same place. So this is right after. And we had a little bit of a blip in between, and we decided to actually cut that piece out. And what happened in that space that you didn't hear, maybe you noticed there was a bit of like a transition point there, is Maureen got really excited about, talking about the mind and the ego. And if you had seen, the recording was in there, you would have seen me kind of disengage and actually disconnect, and just kind of smile and let Maureen carry on. So I actually asked her to pause because I was feeling so disconnected from the conversation. And we sort of quickly realigned, and I told her what I was feeling. We weren't quite, matched up again, and took a few minutes, but then we continued on with the rest of that conversation. And then after completing that recording, we had a conversation about it. And here's what happens between two people that trust each other, that have a good foundation of understanding of each other and a sense of who they are, is that we then had a really honest conversation about what just happened. And I said to her, this is what happened for me. I did not agree to get into a debate with you. That's not what I thought I had signed up for. And so you went on in a direction, and you actually went there without me.
Mm-hmm.
And so the impact on me was that I disconnected. I actually didn't feel safe in that kind of a challenging conversation. And the other thing that came out of it was, the value of, really setting a clear alignment and agreement with somebody before you have those kinds of conversations. I came into this podcast with the understanding that it was about digging deeper, which meant that I'm showing up with a lot of authenticity and vulnerability, sharing experiences of my own that are actually, I hold quite closely to me, but will share when I feel safe.
Mm-hmm.
And then we switched gears, and it felt like an environment that wasn't safe for me anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't ready to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why kind of we're coming back again and sharing this part of it, because you can be messy with somebody and learn how to still stay connected, or actually rebuild connection through these just really honest conversations of, hey, this is what happened. This is my experience. Here was the impact on me. How can we realign again?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I really appreciated you doing that. I appreciated you being really forthright in saying, time out. I'm not with you anymore. And I could sense it. Like I could see you pulling back, and I was like, oh shit, she's pulling back. I better wrap up this weird train of thought that I'm on, in which I'm externally processing my thoughts, and it's coming off like a challenge, which I didn't mean to do. Well, I shouldn't say I didn't mean to do it. I didn't mean to be challenging, but I did mean to debate.
Mm-hmm.
And you're right. I didn't set up, like you described it. You described a container. I didn't set this up that way. And I didn't think to set this up that way. And I think that's where I'm learning here, is that, okay, I love to debate. I find it super interesting to uncover, oh, I don't know. And I need to be cognizant. Not everyone revels in that
Well, maybe there was
all the time, like
right.
I do, right?
Right. And there may have been an assumption too that we can be in that space together in other environments, right? We've had more than enough like really interesting sort of back and forth conversations, sometimes challenging, sometimes, we totally agree with each other and sometimes we don't. So there, I think also was an assumption that we've done that before. We've played in that arena before, so we could just jump into it here. And yet there actually was something different about this container. And for me anyways, and the intent of it.
It's true. And I think, because I've been on the receiving end of what you're describing, and I don't feel very good either. I've been on the receiving end of someone poking at me where I'm like, what the heck is happening right now? This isn't what I signed up for, or we don't have that kind of a rapport in this moment, or I don't know you, or whatever it is. And so thank you for that, because I think setting up the space and the container and the rules around, and making sure that we're on the same page of what we're doing in this conversation is really, really important.
Yeah. And there's two levels of it for me about why we're having this conversation. One is that I honor our relationship so much that I want to make sure that it's still based on honesty and openness. And so we needed to realign and repair as quickly as possible. So I, as much as I can do that with anyone who's important in my life, is to do that immediately after. And the other part for me was we need to practice what we preach, and we need to demonstrate those things to people, because I think so many people they've never had the opportunity or the education around how to do that with somebody. And often there's this damage that goes unrepaired, even if it's small or it's minor, or you just, feel irritated after you leave a conversation. That's damage that needs to be repaired. Because otherwise it just becomes more of a tear in the fabric of their relationship. Again, that could be with people in your personal circle or even work relationships. That happens all the time. People just go, it's not worth it, or I'm being too sensitive, or, I got too many things to do. So they walk away and they don't repair. Versus, you know what I mean?
I do know. I know exactly what you mean, because that was the temptation. I mean, even when we stopped the recording, I just thought, wow, that was weird, and then I, immediately had a story about what happened and thought, I want to think about that a little bit. And then I thought, but you know what, at the heart of this, I really care about you. And I could see that you were uncomfortable. So I don't need to go away and process that. I need to apologize, and so I just said, I'm really sorry. I could tell that you were uncomfortable.
Yeah. And it doesn't always require
that I did. And I'm sorry for that.
Yeah. And it doesn't always require an apology, but it does require that you lean in, right? Versus okay, I'm just going to step back from this. And maybe there's a moment of okay, let me just see what happened. But it is this, what's the word I'm looking for? It is this active leaning in. I'm available to see what just happened here. I'm available to, navigate this with you somehow, even if I don't have the answers, even if I don't even know what happened. Yeah. I'm just going to lean in.
Yeah, that was, well, thank you for that. Anyway, thank you. Thank you for having the presence of mind to say time out, and to be willing to articulate what was going on, rather than just disengaging and staying there and saying, okay, well, that was that.
Yeah.
And for being willing to come back on and talk about it as well. That was very generous of you to do that. Yeah, like you say, practice what you preach. Yeah.
Yeah.
So thank you. Thank you very much for recording twice today. Conversations. And thanks for the work that you do. I really do honestly appreciate the work that you do and how you show up. So thank you very much for that.
Yeah, thank you too. And for, creating space for me and doing the work with me, and for all that you do to help me, see what's possible for me too. So that's a big deal. So thank you.
Oh, thank you. Okay, I'm going to stop it again.
Bye.
Hello, friends, thanks for listening. I am your host, Maureen Towns, and I am the founder of Maureen Towns Consulting. We support families who are experiencing disruptive mental health and addictions issues go from chaos to calm. If you enjoyed this podcast, please listen, share, and subscribe. And please also know that you can reach me at maureenTowns.com, and you can reach out to me through the website, and I'm happy to chat with anybody. My work, the work that I do, is based on my 25 years working as a nurse in both the public and the private healthcare systems in Canada, as well as my facilitation and my education and my training in leadership development, as well as my experience with my own families and supporting them, both all the successes and all the struggles with mental health and addictions issues. And you can read all about those issues in my upcoming book, should be released this year. Please, should be released this year. And the book is called Broken Open. So keep your eyes peeled for that and any information on that. Again, thanks for listening. Please don't forget to share and subscribe.